How can you age evil or lust? How can you age shadow or fog? You can't. But you can age a fog machine. The first horror host, or more appropriate, hostess, is created in Los Angeles, and her name is Vampira in the early 50s. Los Angeles is also home to the most famous horror host, Elvira.
Wait a minute. When you say the first...
I mean, there's the Crypt Keeper in EC Comics.
That doesn't count.
But like...
But he wasn't on TV.
No.
So she's the
first horror host.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Because TV was like 4 years old.
And they didn't have a horror host yet?
I mean, the whole idea basically was all stations had people like... who would like present cartoons and stuff like that, but nobody had it for like these B movies and horror movies.
Yeah, okay.
She was the first one.
Huh, interesting. And a woman at that. They had those back then?
Oh boy. Vampira was born on December 11th, 1922 as Elizabeth Mila, here we go, Sarajanami in Gloucester, Massachusetts.
That's a curse.
Gloucester, Massachusetts, home of cartoonist Tony Millionaire, who was the reason we did our episode Griffith versus Getty.
Hey, don't give him too much credit.
You're right.
He's a millionaire.
Through her career, she gave multiple interviews stating that she was born in Patsamo, Finland, because she kept pushing the idea that she was related to the famous Finnish Olympic diver Paavo Nurmi, who was mentioned in the Grando Olympics episode.
Really? He was?
Nurmi arrived in Los Angeles for the 32 Olympics, but was disqualified because he was declared a professional athlete and wasn't allowed to compete. And what was funny about that was when I read his name doing the research, I was like, Nurmi, like Vampira. Well, yeah, that's what Vampira thought too. His name's like my name. As far as I can tell, it's not true. And that's the one thing about Mila, as she would later call herself. She was very standoffish about revealing too much biographical information in interviews. She was very reclusive for many years. She was very private.
My witch didn't have much stuff. Maybe they really were witches.
Yeah, they don't want to get away.
Vampira and Louise Huebner. Oh, my, they're having an orgy.
Take a seat, ladies. You're very old. Both of you, so old.
Please, we'll get to you later.
Her father, Oni...
I brought my magical horny horn.
I can't even be near it because it's so horny. Her father, Oni Sarajanami, later shortened to Nurmi, or Niermi.
Is that Armenian?
No, it's Finnish. Sarajanami.
Is that in Armenia?
You know, I don't even know where Finland is, okay? It's close to Russia.
Don't admit that on a podcast.
He immigrated from Finland to North America about 1910. There was a surge of Finnish immigrants who came to America between 1850 to 1900 while Finland struggled with Tsarist Russia. In 1920, Oni met an American woman, Sophia, and gave birth to 2 children, one of them being Mila, sorry. I always say her name wrong like it's Obama's daughter. Mila.
So Obama's daughter is a witch. Interesting.
She's a vamp. Her father was part of the Temperance Union, the Finnish Temperance Union, who wasn't necessarily anti-alcohol, but they were definitely like a progressive group, which you kind of see in Mila later. They moved around a lot. She spent some childhood in Ashtabula, Ohio, and she struggled particularly, their whole family did during the Depression, obviously. She was a very dreamy and dramatic young woman. She was once quoted by saying by a friend that she never caught the gist of being alive, and that things outside the womb would never cease to be weird and terrifying.
Outside the womb?
Womb. Very vampire.
Amen, Vampira.
I feel ya. Her teen years were rough. She was alienated and bullied a lot in Astoria, Oregon, when kind of ended up. She landed in Astoria in 1939 and stayed to graduate there in 1940. She took theater and drama classes and found great pride in playing other people. She said one of the most satisfying moments of her days was when she was dressed as the Dragon Lady from the Terry and the Pirates comic strip. Nurmi found it quite empowering dressing up like a strong sexual female. But boy, as soon as 1940 hit, she graduated. She left hobo style. Just got out. She first came to Hollywood as many other young people did in that day to get in the moving pictures. She was also now going by her middle name and a reworking shortened version of her last name. Vampira. Hi, I'm Vampira. She went from Sarajanami to Niemi, which her father was going by, to Nurmi. Now Mila Nurmi is what she's going by. There doesn't seem to be much about her first time in Los Angeles other than her attempting to become a cheesecake model, which she did accomplish, but it was just work to pay the bills. She modeled a long cheesecake. It was just work to pay the bills. All this modeling for cheesecake stuff was it was like pre-Betty Page, Bunny Yeager pinup, so it's just kind of like cutesy smile, you buy a bunch of rocks. It still wasn't as liberating an experience. She still hadn't found what she was looking for doing this.
You too.
In an attempt to get on stage, she joined a troupe that went cross-country and ended up on Mae West's Catherine Was Great play. She may or may not have been fired from that, but I can't get a clear word. In 1944, though...
May or Mae West.
Mae East, Mae West. In 1944, she got cast in a theater review, the New York-based Dr. Silkini's Spook Show, a macabre spook show, which had elements of a magic show and like Universal Monster movies. It's like a live review. It sounds really cool. Dr. Silkini had one of the more popular shows in New York at the time, so apparently there was like a magic show to open it, then a sort of like make a monster sketch or something in the middle that had like horror themed, and then they'd close with another magic show, which sounds like everything I've ever wanted. She got picked up by another one of these spook shows produced by Mike Todd, who would later go on to marry Elizabeth Taylor. Again, unclear what she did, whether she performed in the show or wasn't one of these like atmospheric body art players in the lobby, just kind of yeah, whatever. Either way, she gets a write-up in the Hollywood Reporter, which gets her noticed by old pea in the jar Howard Hawks, who flew her back to
He puts pee in the jar? I thought Howard Hughes put pee in the jar.
Oh, it's Howard Hughes. That's right.
He doesn't put pee in the jar.
I get the HHs confused.
Yeah,
Part of the 4-H club. I was getting confused.
He put good things in the jar. Don't worry about Howard Hawks.
Who flew
He directed Ferris Bueller, right?
He flew Mila back to Los Angeles in 1945 and signed her to be in one of his films based on the Russian novel Dreadful Hollow, which was supposed to have a screenplay written by old booze hog F. Scotty Fitzgerald. But just like most of their projects together, nothing really happened. Howard Hawks' big picture at the time was The Big Sleep, based on the Raymond Chandler novel, and Mila believes that she was plucked because of her resemblance to the film's star Lauren Bacall, whom Hawks also discovered. She does look a little bit like her. But again, not much happened. She became like some Hawks standby girl. Contract was signed up. She's just waiting to be activated, but nothing happened. She has an uncredited role in a film called If Winter Comes. Nothing there. So she returned to cheesecake modeling, and she posed for pinup artist Alberto Vargas, who's very famous, as well as photographer Man Ray, again, very famous. In 1949, she gets married to a former child star and screenwriter
Shirley Temple.
Screenwriter Dean Reznor, who would later write the screenplays for Dirty Harry and Play Misty for Me. Yeah. She was voted Miss Ocean Beach of 1952 in Glamorous Models magazine. She had a centerfold, a magazine full of surfer bunny types. And although, yes, she was beautiful, she didn't quite have the like blonde surfer look that California was known for. Like Mila looked foreign. People have commented on her having like a slight Scandinavian look.
Isn't that blonde surfer type?
That's what I thought too, like bulky, but I don't know. But people would comment. I think maybe because of her, like she had high cheekbones and her eyebrows were kind of raised and stuff, but I don't even know. But she didn't look, in my opinion, didn't look American. She looks like Finnish.
I mean, in my definition of American, she did not fit in.
Like none of this was the right fit for her. It wasn't the thing that was going to catch. And it's so odd that a small town girl gets so close to stardom so fast. Mae West, Howard Hawks, F. Scott Fitzgerald, Alberto Vargas, Man Ray, all these opportunities with famous folk, and nothing is quite fitting right. Amidst all this frustration, confusion in her life, in September 1951, Cassandra Peterson was born in Manhattan, Kansas. The town's nickname is the Little Apple. From what I understand, it's a small college town
Very Little Apple.
It's a small college town that runs along the Kansas River. It's about 2 hours away from Kansas City. Her mother owned a costume shop and her father was an insurance sales rep. As a child, she was severely burned when she pulled a pot of boiling water brewing Easter eggs off the stove and she was doused with it. 35% of her body had to be skin grafted, and she was in the hospital for 3 months because of this.
God.
She was bullied through much of her childhood because of it, some sort of common monster. Meanwhile,
she was a monster.
Meanwhile, back in Los Angeles, a
Meanwhile, the Joker's recruiting men.
Back in Los Angeles.
Cut to City of Angels. Witches
Back
everywhere.
to Gotham City. Witches everywhere. Fornicating. A spectacular thing happens in Los Angeles or everywhere. Television.
Oh, I love it.
I love it. What is it? I love it.
I've never seen one, but I love it.
Now, the pressure on getting into films was alleviated as now there was room for hungry actors to be cast in a TV show or commercial advertisement. Now, it kind of spread the pressure off of films. Now, you can go be in a commercial. Go be in Pepsi-Cola.
Go advertise cancer cigarettes.
Well, the 40s were some good post-war years. The 50s in America is when the post-war boom really gets its peak. The prosperity reigned supreme for some people, and you could just laugh at the Great Depression. Now, the youth of America had spare time and spare money like never before, and they had a small rebellion that was building within the youth that opposed the repression brought forth by anti-communist displays of conformity. Before rock and roll was ready to be served to dorky American boys in small towns, all you had was beat poets and bebop jazz, which great. But you also had new neat things like the cartoons of wildly macabre artist Charles Addams, creator of the then unnamed comic strip The Addams Family. It was never named that.
Mentor Huebner will soon come by and make his work great.
I don't know if it's great. It's as good. His comics were witty and dark, playfully mocking the squeaky clean ideals of the 50s. The early years of television. The early years had like shows like people had never seen before. Like the Sid Caesar show was to them at the time unpredictable. You don't know what Sid Caesar's going to do next.
Is he going to strangle Mel Brooks again?
With her talents and her screenwriter husband, she was hoping to make a splash in the industry and get a movie contract like everybody else was. She just had to be patient and jump at the right opportunity. And that opportunity came on Halloween night, 1953.
She's waiting at the crossroads. Robert Johnson's there. She pushes him away and says,
"Ladies
my turn."
first. Blood.
Ladies first blood. That's my female Rambo reboot. It's also about periods.
Yeah, subtext. She kills the entire staff of a sheriff's department with her period.
By the raw power of a woman's period.
I am woman, hear me, period.
I am woman, hear me, poor.
Oh.
Don't know if that can go in.
No, none of this can. I don't even know if the episode can go in. Mila's character origin stems from a ritzy Hollywood masquerade ball held by choreographer Lester Horton, which was called the Bal Carib Halloween Extravaganza. Lester Horton was a dance director for Tarzan and the Leopard Woman, which starred one of the two Olympians who would play Tarzan. In this one was played by swimmer Johnny Westmuller. The other Tarzan who was Olympian was Buster Crabbe, who was the one that swam in the 32 Olympics. Yeah. At the time, her idea for television was to create a show based on Charles Adams' comic strip. Since it was such a delicious...
It'll never never work.
It won't work.
Who's going to do it? Who's going to play Gomez? How are they going to do the thing? Or whatever.
Samwise Gamgee's father? I don't know his name.
Gange.
What the hell's his name? Samwise...
Gamgee.
Is it Gamgee?
Samwise Gamgee.
His dad plays Gomez. Is it his dad? John Aston.
Wait a minute. Samwise Gamgee's dad was Gomez Adams?
And his mom's Patty Duke. His name's Sean Aston.
I can't see that.
We'll look it up later.
I simply cannot see that.
We'll look it up later.
All right.
She wanted to make a Charles Adams.
But he's so fat.
Little Rudy and the guy who plays Gomez are related. They're both short. That doesn't make any sense.
I don't get it. I mean, why would a guy who's the son of a witchy sort of man want to destroy evil with Frodo?
That's his dad. So she wanted to make basically an Addams Family TV show before it became a TV show back in the 50s. And because it was such a delicious parody of family sitcoms at the time, like the Websters. So she went to the party dressed as Morticia Addams, who again was not named at the time. Basically, it was like just had a black slinky dress that was like cut low in the breast area. She rented a black wig and she powdered herself white. Basically, this costume cost her $4. And damn it, if that costume wasn't a hit that night. She won the Valkyrie costume contest that night, and she was noticed by KABC program director Hans Stromberg Jr., son of the MGM producer Hans Stromberg. His son, Jr., would later go on to produce shows like Shows We Love, Beverly Hills Billy.
The Beverly Hills Billies?
Beverly Hillbillies, Hogan's Heroes, Lost in Space, Green Acres, Gilligan's Island. Producer. I'm gonna blow up.
It's supposed to be a 3-hour podcast.
Now, there was too much trouble putting the Charles Addams comic strip onto television, what with the money and the rights and all that. But KABC did have a horror movie package that they planned airing late from 10:30 to midnight, I believe. But they had no way to present these B movies to the audience. That's what they used to do back in the day. They used to have like a commentator,
the
basically.
Late Show.
Yeah. Mila's job, or more appropriate, Vampira's job, was to present these films to an audience, explain who was in it and what was about. TV was odd back then, but damn it, I prefer it. She redid her Morticia outfit with a lean of the influence of erotic magazine Bazaar and some more vamp elements. Not vampire, but vamp. A pale, strong female, like it's a silent movie era. Tallulah Bankhead, Clara Bow, Gloria Swanson, Theta Bara. She also threw in the Dragon Lady from Terry and the Pirates. It was a tug.
Can't let that go.
A tug towards like the dominatrix looks, but she wasn't even aware that was a thing yet. Like she just knew from Bazaar magazine, like, oh, like slinking the tummy area.
I can wear a ball gag.
Her husband came. I can talk with the ball gag. Yeah, sure. No. Her husband came up with the name for her character and called her Vampira, which I've said already like 4 times, so it's not a surprise.
The big reveal. Spoiled it.
Now her contract with Kate.
So no connection to vampire at all. I mean, she kind of made the connection
to vampire, yeah, but she's not like she doesn't play a vampire though. Well, I mean, she kind of does.
It's kind of vampiric.
It's vampiric, yeah. I don't know Dean Reisner's logic behind it, but it's a good name.
Now, who wrote Dracula?
Who wrote it?
Dracula.
Bram Stoker.
Now, what would Bram Stoker think about this? Bram Stoker? Why couldn't we think of Bram Stoker?
I thought of Francis Ford Coppola twice, so... Didn't he write the original novel, Velda Impaler?
Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula by Bram Stoker.
He wants to do it so dark. Okay, let's talk about her contract, which was kind of odd, the one that she had with Kate.
My favorite part of every episode, the contract negotiations.
This was with Channel 7 KABC.
Really?
Yeah, this is where it first aired. Foreshadows trouble to come. No agent or lawyer is listed.
Did Disney own it yet?
No. What do you, Banana Pants? No, I didn't own it yet.
It's just bananas in my pants. Stop saying that.
Yes, I'm happy to see you.
Yes, I am happy to see you, but it's also a banana in my pants.
So there's no agent or lawyer listed. The performer designation is left blank. Check payable to Vampira, not Mila Nurmi, but also check payable to Vampira, care of KABC program director, the man who discovered her, Hans Stromberg Jr. As R.H. Green says in his documentary Vampire Me, it's a contract between a major corporation and a fictional character. There isn't confirmation on this being the final contract she signed, but it at least shows KABC's sort of intentions.
Of manipulating her?
Yeah, basically. She could play her character on national TV, sure, but KABC could refuse her right to do that. But with that, Vampira had her own trick brewing in the cauldron. FYI, I know she's not a witch, she's more a vampire, but they don't have cauldrons, I get it.
If a woman wears black, she's a witch.
That applies today, 2016. Mila Nurmi had creative control over Vampira, 51% to 49%, which is pretty cool. She owned the character and had creative call over the show, and they would simply broadcast it. She made around $60 a week from the studios, all spent on body makeup and taxis, and she was being supported by her husband. While she was the creator of the character and most of the show, writer Pete Rothenstein was the writer for most of the sketches in the movie pattern. The two worked really well together. The pilot, which was called Dig Me Later Vampira, which was later just called Vampira Show, first aired on April 30th, 1954. The intro, have you ever seen the intro to this before? It's like not a lot of her show exists. The intro, which was just used as a promo, which is why it still exists, because it was like a commercial. Like I said, it's one of the only surviving minutes of the show. It's a long, dark hallway. It's candles. It's really spooky. There's fog. And you see Vampira slink out of the dark, foggy hallway. She walks right up to the camera and screams. Like a howling scream, which she would later try to play off as like it was a nod to an orgasm orgasm.
I tripped.
I tripped on an orgasm.
There was a spider on the camera.
She screams really loud, and then she kind of like comes down into like a seductive smile. It's really cool. And that's how she intros the show. Nobody had ever seen anything like that on TV before, but there's like 4 things on TV. You should watch it.
They hadn't seen a lot of things on TV.
It's
like a woman.
Like a woman without her husband nearby. Hey, get married. You, Daniel, and anybody listening, watch it. It's super spooky and fun.
Right.
It's really great.
Will I be scared?
What are you scared of? Women?
Screaming women who have, pleasurable experiences.
And fog machines? Yeah, you're going to be scared.
Especially fog machines. Most of all, the fog machine.
Dry ice scares me.
And white makeup.
So not only had American audiences not seen anything that deliciously spooky and fun on TV before, they'd never seen anyone like Vampira before. Especially in the 50s when the Atomic Family...
Finnish person.
Yeah, exactly. What is this person? Her eyebrows are so weird.
Is she Swedish or is she Norwegian?
Either way, she doesn't belong here. Especially in the 50s when the Atomic Family and the Modern Housewife was being pushed at the public at all times because we're not communists. Everyone has aprons on. And that girl, Vampira, was slender, like frighteningly skinny. Her measurements were...
she doesn't eat pies every day. Well, isn't she getting enough gelatin? Has she not eaten mayonnaise dipped in Vienna sausages yet? She didn't eat lettuce with blue cheese and little bits of bacon all over it? She didn't eat a pineapple stuffed with duck?
Oh, she didn't eat a Jell-O mold?
She didn't eat a Jell-O mold that has black olives inside of it? She didn't have milk that has gravy poured into it?
She didn't have an old-fashioned poured in milk with hamburger patties? She didn't eat poached eggs?
She didn't eat poached eggs filled with Spam?
I'd like to order the Last Buffalo, please. That was a long rant on 50s food.
It just makes me sick.
Her measurements, this means nothing to regular boys who are scared of women like you and me. Measurements are 38, 17, 36, which her waist was terribly skinny.
The only time I hear those sorts of 17, 38, that's when I'm playing football. I don't know anything about measurements. I play football. I don't try on these. I don't put on dresses and I play football.
That's my high school longer combination because I never left. Still rule that place. She had like a nothing waist, like zero, like frighteningly skinny. As a writer, W. Scott Poole put it, she appeared like she didn't have a womb. Very unmother-like, which was, again, insane.
This is ridiculous.
Insane.
They didn't know what to do with a woman like this on TV.
It was
where's her womb? Where do her babies come from?
She spit them up. Vampira was on an insane 50s diet at the time. That sounds pretty dangerous.
What was she?
Oh my God, stop it. So she basically learned that what eats away the fat from a cooking steak is papaya powder. So she mixed papaya powder with the cream and applied it, basically inventing a spot reducing cream. The powder tenderized the fiber and cell. So once it was applied around her waist, she wrapped a rubber tube around her waist and slept in it, opening the pores and eating the flesh away. That's
horrifying.
She would fast for a day and a half. Okay, here's what I think I understand. Thursday night, she applies the cream. She wakes up Friday and begins fasting. Friday night, she takes a steam bath and begins to hydrate. Continues fasting all through Saturday. Saturday night, she gets cinched into her costume, and then she films the episode and then immediately binge eats till Monday. If this was too tedious, too bad, because she had to force herself into this. This was the image she created for Vampira, and she had to carry it out. Zero waste was her signature.
That's so sad.
Like I said before, the show itself is almost completely lost, but it sounds so incredible. She's super funny. If you catch her on any other show, she was on other shows, and those are restored, or not restored, but they're preserved. Super funny, if you ever see her. She was called affectionately the Camp Vamp. She's a wisecracker. Everyone wants you to think that she's so like noir seductress, and she's like this ingenue or whatever, but she really loved puns. She loved being silly. She was like the proto horror host, and she honestly, even the lamest of the horror hosts, doesn't stray that far from Vampira's model that she set up.
To be fair, they're all the lamest.
Yeah. I mean, she's not that much better. She smokes like she's Joan from Mad Men while she's doing all this, by the way. She makes fun of movies. She has a pet spider named Rolo that she would speak to.
Yeah, well, my person had a beetle named Sandoz.
Everybody's got a pet. There were sketches on the show. One time she played like a Groucho Marx character. It was like a one-woman show, like kind of like whatever Carol Burnett did. One of her close friends made an appearance on the show. Vampira played a librarian type alongside him. Many people tried to scandalize their friendship of her and this guy, but she maintains it was platonic, and I believe it. She said they were psychically drawn to one another. This friend of hers was named James Dean. And although he hadn't made a splash yet, his new style of acting and his good looks and over-dramatic demeanor guaranteed he was going to be somebody. She had a small group of these Nighthawk type bohemian artists. They would call themselves the Night Watch, and they'd all hang around all night diner Googie's. Listen to episode Googie A Go-Go for more information on that restaurant. The Googie of
This is the life. Just hanging out with James Dean at a diner.
At Vampira in a diner at 4 in the morning.
A real life recreation of that picture where James Dean and Elvis and,
and
Michael
Marilyn
Jackson, they're playing pool or whatever.
The Googie of choice was the one next to Schwab's at Sunset and Crescent Heights. Schwab's is where all the big money Hollywood stars would go, and the outcasts like them would go to Googie's, and the two groups hated each other.
So they were at the actual, not just a Googie place, they were at Googie's.
Gooey's. Yeah, they were at Gooey's and they hang out there. Right next door were all like Frank Sinatra and they were like did not get along with anybody. And that outsiderness fed her portrayal and her image of Vampira. The problem with that rebellious nature of hers was that Vampira was getting very popular. People loved the show. She was not just a hit locally, which it should have been. She was getting write-ups in different magazines, and so she was becoming like a national hit. She made the cover of People of TV in 1955. She had a Life magazine spread dedicated to her. One of the TV stations, it might have been Life magazine, I'm not really sure. They hired an old Packard carriage, which looks like the Addams Family-esque kind of car, and they got a chauffeur to drive Vampira around Los Angeles to promote the show, and the photos are fantastic. There's one, my favorite of her is like her scaring a small child out of the car. She's just being driven around town. She received the Emmy nomination for the most outstanding female television personality of 1954 for a sitcom.
What? That was a category?
I guess so. Ruthless EC Horror Comics, with their Crypt Keeper horror hosts at the time, had come and gone already, but Vampira was around for their, just to coincide perfectly almost with the son of EC Horror Comics, Mad Magazine. That's exactly what stemmed from them. So the two of them were almost birthing camp together. Bobby Bear wrote a neat song called Vampira. Listen to it. Then the first strike comes.
Do it now.
Let's pause this. I played alongside. It doesn't matter what I say. Then the first strike comes from KBC when they attempt to strike lightning twice. They decided that if Vampira worked for horror and B-movies, they needed another host for cheap romantic flicks that they had the license to play.
Are you about to go into the history of Fabio?
Because
I am too. Yeah.
This is how porn starts. And thus, Voluptua was born, played by Gloria Paul, a former cheesecake model and dancer. Voluptua was a sort of like soft-spoken, plain Jane, blonde seductress, like a love goddess. She wanted, like a mistress. She wanted to
She sounds like a Pokemon.
Go catch her and see what you catch. Like people would say, like it was borderline pornographic for the time, and it was canceled due to the protests. It didn't have much effect on Vampira, other than just revealing that KBC was trying to replicate what they were doing with Vampira. They were trying to replicate the success. Vampira worked for them because truly it was cheap to make it, and it was a dead slide. It was 10:30 to 12. That's why they wanted to do it.
Yeah.
But now that she was becoming more popular, they wanted to have creative control over the character to ensure that they wouldn't lose money if she left, and Milo wouldn't give up control of Vampira. So they were trying to like, okay, well, we need something that we can control so we don't lose money. They were talking about making the Vampira show a national show broadcast through different local TV stations with different actresses playing Vampira.
The mantle of the vamp.
Exactly. Which Milo obviously wasn't happy about. This was her character. So one day they just canceled the Vampira show without any notice. Kaput.
Great.
She then took the character to competing.
And they gave it to a Manpira.
Vampiro. I can't come up with a name for him. He sets everything on fire because he's a Vampiro, but then he hates fire. It's a man versus man. I don't know. Monster versus monster. Get Rod Serling to write this. Took the
to serve Manpiro.
She took the Vampira show to competing network KHJ, which was Channel 9. They picked her up briefly, but her... Oh, I wrote death span as a pun, not a pun, but a play on lifespan. Her lifespan on that station didn't last that much longer.
Would you call that a death span?
I don't think that I would.
My ghostwriter must have thought this was funny.
The KABC Vampira show ran for 54 shows. That's a year and 2 weeks for Channel 7.
Wait a minute. Oh, so that was the death span of the show?
Yeah.
54 weeks? Okay.
54 weeks, yeah. No, the death span for Channel 9 wasn't that much longer, is what I'm saying. It didn't last that long. Her death span for ABC...
Hey, it's catching on.
It was 54 shows, which was a year and 2 weeks.
It's taken the nation by stormy night.
Dark and stormy night.
It was a dark and stormy podcast.
For Channel 9, Vampira only aired for 13 weeks. So around this time, she divorces Dean Reisner. They break up. We're going to end you exactly at 13 for thematic purposes.
It's theatrical.
Yeah. We could wait for 666 weeks, but no.
There's two options here.
We could either go now or we could wait a really long time.
Or we can go like after Happy Days goes off the air. You'll find out.
You'll end around the time that Joni Loves Chachi starts.
There will be a crossover.
1955, she separates from her husband, Dean Reisner. Her friendship with James Dean is starting to become rocky as his fame rises.
Is he the Dean?
Yeah, James Dean Reisner. They're not on good terms when James Dean's killed in a car accident that same year. She is absolutely crushed by his death, and his ghost seems to haunt her.
Poor choice of words.
She's like brokenhearted about this. Like I watch interviews with her as an older woman, and she like looks away from the camera when she talks about James Dean. And she like finds different things to talk about, and they're like, "How did you feel when he died?" She's like, "I don't know."
Let's talk about Buddy Holly.
I had his wallet in my pocket when he died. Because I'm Waylon Jennings. It's weird that both her and Natalie Wood, when James Dean died, were both like a part of their psyche was crushed.
Yeah, well, at least Natalie Wood didn't have to deal with it for that long.
Yeah, Natalie Wood like built weird shrines to him after he died. Vampira, like, oh my god, I'll tell you this. So after Vampira, she has to resort to doing like cheap gigs. She like has opening car dealerships. According to the documentary, she was riding in USC's homecoming queen.
She would like that.
She would have loved her and Forey Ackerman would have loved that.
They should have gotten married.
He had Wendy.
I'm just writing my fan fiction version of LA history.
She would ride in the homecoming parades. Like I said in the documentary, they mentioned that she was cast in a California traffic campaign to warn people against the dangers of automobile accidents, and on display was James Dean's death car, the wreckage, and it didn't go well. She left like weeping. Isn't that insane?
Why would they do that to
I have no. Maybe they didn't realize that they were like really good pals.
Still.
Yeah. So she gets on a few more shows at Vampira, which is great because that is more surviving footage we have of Mila in character, and
we get to watch her with Cal Worthington.
One is on the George Gobel show, and it gives us the longest running sketch we see of Vampira. It's an old time TV show, which is pretty fun, and you'd like it.
Of course.
She was on a. It's actually super funny. She's on a like What's My Line type show called Place to Face. She appeared on the Red Skeleton show alongside Bela Lugosi during his career downfall. They continue to plummet together.
Real vampire.
Also, apparently, there's a Honeymooners sketch with Peter Lorre as a Ralph character who drives a hearse, and Vampira plays the wife, akin to Alice.
Oh boy.
All fun.
Oh boy.
Him trying to play a
one
Ralph.
of these nights.
I always do Bob Dylan.
One of these nights. One of these nights. Bang zoom. Straight to the bat over the moon.
So here's the thing. She keeps appearing, but it's always as Vampira, never as Mila. She went to parties as Vampira, not Mila. She would refer to Vampira in the third person. It became like a sort of symbiotic spider thing. Then the gigs began to dry up. Things were looking really bad, and that's when Ed Wood comes calling. Oh, no. If you haven't seen Tim Burton's Ed Wood, please God, do yourself a favor. It's so good. But in case you just don't want to watch it, don't want to listen to me, here's the gist of it. Ed Wood is regarded as the worst director of all time. I don't know about that. And his opus was a film called Plan 9 from Outer Space, also regarded by some, not me, as the worst film of all time. It's not.
Me.
Again, Ed Wood didn't want her as Mila in the movie. He wanted the character Vampira to appear in the film. She agreed to do it, and she agreed to do it as long as she didn't have to speak any of Ed Wood's stupid lines. She even did that makeup slightly different, so it looks like an odd cousin of Vampira. And she only appears, if not a couple times, then just once. Like, I'm trying to remember all the scenes she's in. I think it's just one time. She was paid $200 for it. She had to take the bus to the studio in full costume.
Like a private bus?
She had to pay $1.25 for a private bus, and there was a bunch of other people riding in their own private bus. So at the time, she was living at 5607 Carlton Way in Hollywood, which is near Hollywood Boulevard and Western. At this time, she was becoming very reclusive and very paranoid that people were trying to steal the character from her.
Well,
she became very...
kind of did.
Yeah. And she was right to think that people were coming after her. People began attacking Nurmi. One instance was at a beauty salon. Someone tried to burn her scalp, which I don't know if you've ever seen pictures of Vampira with just a peak and like a bald head. It's because someone she had to shave her head. Another person grabbed her near Crescent Heights. They just grabbed her in the street. That same year, Christmas, an apartment fire from a lit cigarette almost kills her and her friend Charles Beatles.
The Beatlemania!
Her arms and hands were burned during this while she was trying to save her cat. They were all first-degree burns. She was 34 at the time. Life was getting really rough, and frankly, the public was getting sick of Vampira. She was the girl of the minute, like any Sports Illustrated model, but now the minute was up. She hobbled along. She got a small part in 1959's The Beat Generation. She had short hair, and she tells a poem with a rat on her.
The Beat Generation Mania!
In the movie, she is reciting the poem. She has a rat on her shoulder.
Oh, I love it.
It's Mila in this movie. It's Mila, but it's very Vampira. It's has a weird Vampira feel to it. It's just something funny. In 1958, she marries a much younger man named John Brinkley, who had a bit part in one of my favorite B movies, Bucket of Blood. What's funny about Bucket of Blood that it's a sort of parody of The Beat Generation, which she just had a small part. But Bucket of Blood takes place in Venice, California. It's one of my favorite California horror movies. The marriage doesn't last long. Whatever. So she goes to Vegas for a while, and
horror movie into its own.
She goes to Vegas for a while, and although many say she began dating Elvis Presley, she maintains they only necked.
They only necked.
And lied around talking about deep...
What a neck.
They only lied around talking about deep philosophical things. From what I hear about Elvis, yeah, he probably just did.
How big of a hoagie is too big? That's the sort of thing.
Think about like dying in a toilet. No, never. That's awful.
How much cocaine can a body have in it?
Like really though. She then went to New York to see if she could find a better work. Nothing really came her way. While she was in New York, she was attacked by a crazy person who broke into her apartment. He beat and choked her. He used a straight razor to cut her clothes off.
What?
He threatened her, and he possibly, most likely, had his way with her. She escaped the situation, naked, bleeding, and managed to get help. The police got her, and they asked her to take photos of the abuse marks for her record, and on impulse, she posed almost seductively for the shots. I remember seeing the photos before, and I had no idea what was happening.
Sunset Boulevard all over again.
Pretty much Sunset Boulevard. I've seen the photos before, and I didn't really know what I was looking at, and now that I know, I'm brokenhearted. That's so sad.
Why did she activate this in people?
I don't know what it was. I really don't know what it was.
Weird. They didn't know how to handle a woman like that on TV.
Maybe that's what it was. Maybe I just think this happened all the time back then, and because she's famous, we're hearing about it. How tragic is that?
Every woman was going through this,
and only the famous ones you'd hear it from. She got one more opportunity to show off Vampira in Liberace's live show "Come As You Were" in 1956 as the warm-up act for a headliner Liberace. She thought it was going to be her comeback to TV.
His wavy hair is just so heterosexual. There's something about it.
Sometimes all glitter is gold, and he's wearing all of it. And boy, is that guy gold.
All that glitters is something Liberace touched.
She thought this was going to be her comeback to TV, but it was not. In the end, we know as little of her childhood and upbringing as we have footage of her show. And that's kind of it for Vampira. Mila's career in Hollywood is that's it. She trudged along doing odd jobs for small wages. She sold handmade jewelry out of a store called Vampira's Attic. She sold...
That's so weird that my witch also went into like an antique dealership.
Yeah, that's what you do when you're an old lady in Los Angeles. She sold celebrity gravestone rubbings. In 1962, she got skilled at carpentry and became the manager of a linoleum tile warehouse.
That is unsettling.